But you've muted me too. Okay. Yep. Live stream has also started. Linda, the live stream has started. The live stream has started. Okay. Well, welcome to current viewers, whether you're watching through Zoom or you're watching through KCC's live stream. It's kind of a bit of an experiment doing it through these two mediums. I think what's going to be best, like I said in the introductory email, is to first just watch what we do here, what I do here, and then having, especially if you're watching live. Now, if you're watching through the recording that will be on the Vimeo site, then you could just watch one time and you'll have the opportunity to pause the video, to look at your text and see where we are. But especially if you're watching live, I think the best thing would be to watch me go through it, and then you can gather your materials, and then when you come back to watch it with everything set up in front of you, then you can go through it more slowly. You'll have the opportunity to pause the recording to make sure you understand. So we should begin with the prayers that we typically do before a teaching. What I have found over the past couple days of doing these Zoom meetings is it doesn't really work so well to chant together as a group because the microphones change and it's not really clear who's leading it. So I'm going to recite the prayers and you all can just think in your mind that you are making these same prayers. So it's things that you know: the refuge and bodhicitta, the 7-branch prayer, the brief mandala offering, the prayer to turn the wheel of the Dharma. So making the wish that this instruction period be of the highest benefit to all beings, we go for refuge. To the objects of refuge, we do the 7-branch prayer, make a mandala offering, and request that the teachings be done. In the Buddha, Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly, I take refuge until enlightenment. Through the merit of generosity and the other perfections, may I accomplish Buddhahood for the benefit of beings. In the Buddha, Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly, I take refuge until enlightenment. Through the merit of generosity and the other perfections, may I accomplish Buddhahood for the benefit of beings. In the Buddha, Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly, I take refuge until enlightenment. Through the merit of generosity and the other perfections, may I accomplish Buddhahood for the benefit of beings. However few virtuous actions I have gathered, such as prostrating, offering, confessing, rejoicing, beseeching, and praying, I dedicate them all to full and perfect enlightenment. The base is anointed with scented water and strewn with flowers, adorned by the supreme mountain, the 4 continents, and the sun and moon. Through this offering, conceived as a Buddha field, may all beings enjoy the pure realms. I pray that the Dharma wheel of the Mahayana, Hinayana, and of the teachings common to both be turned in accordance with the wishes and aptitudes of beings. So first, before we begin, I just want to acknowledge that it is a time of great uncertainty when there's a lot of confusion and more anxiety and suffering pervading all over the world. These feelings are, of course, natural when our ordinary patterns, supports, patterns of interaction, supports, livelihoods are interrupted in such an abrupt way. These feelings of anxiety, of course, are natural. I think it's important in this time that we do not abandon the practice of Dharma. The degree to which we can, through shamatha, vipassana, maintain equanimity, the degree to which we can notice unhelpful patterns of thought playing out in our mind and let them go, the degree to which we can be with things as they are and deal with those, as opposed to being with scenarios that have, in a sense, spun out of control in our minds. That is, we are confronted by our projections about what might happen, or this could go wrong, or that could go wrong, instead of being able to be present and just deal with the situation at hand. Of course, that's going to be helpful, and the degree to which we can rely on past practices of loving kindness and compassion, perhaps even using this difficulty we feel now to leverage that into loving kindness and compassion for others. It can reduce the anxiety, the fear, the difficulty we experience, and it can open us up so that we can be more available to others who don't have these kinds of resources to draw upon. Having said that, because it is a time of such difficulty, it might not feel like the right time to take on a new practice with which you're not familiar, which has a bit of complexity, but I think you'll find after today that it's not as complex as it seems. So I spoke with one person this morning who felt that way, that this person was getting felt like there was a lot of benefit in going back to refuge and prostrations, the physical act of the prostration, helping to undermine or work out some of the anxiety that gets stored up in our body. And that's great. If that feels like the thing to do, don't feel like, oh, but now, the third quarter of the year is coming and I must switch practices. If that gives you comfort and feels meaningful, by all means, that's wonderful. Keep doing that. I support you in doing that. If you want to continue with the Vajrasattva practice because that feels like it's of benefit in dispelling the confusion, the uncertainty, stick with that. We don't need to be too uptight about what we do when, especially in times of greater uncertainty. Okay, mandala. So of course we are practicing in the context of Mahamudra, the ground Mahamudra being our awakened nature. It's always been there, it can't be destroyed. Practices don't enhance it, confusion doesn't further sully it. It remains as it is, pristine. Path Mahamudra is what we do, the practices that we do, these preliminary practices of prostrations, Vajrasattva, Mandala, Guru Yoga, including the four thoughts that turn the mind to the Dharma, and then including shamatha and vipassana. These are the path. These are the things that we sort of do anew that help us to experience, actualize, realize, experience in a clearer way this ground Mahamudra, the nature of our being. And when all of these veils which keep us from experiencing it have been cleared away, and we realize that ground Mahamudra for what it is, that is Buddhahood, so we call that fruition Mahamudra. So the ground, the path, and the fruition. Kala Rinpoche spoke again and again and again when people talked about their meditation practice, not being able to practice like they wished they could, or what's the best thing I can do to realize Mahamudra. He said it comes down to two things: purification and gathering the accumulations. These two concepts are basically the purpose for these preliminary practices, beginning with refuge and prostrations, Vajrasattva, Mandala, Guru Yoga. Through actions of body, speech, and mind, we have further bought into the conceptual separation between self and other. We have fallen under the sway of the afflictions. Acting out of the afflictions, these actions of body, speech, and mind, further shroud this Buddha nature. So now we have to undo. We have to remove the veils that have been put in place. As we said, through the practice of refuge and prostrations, it being so physical, Mingyur Rinpoche says this principally, it works on all the veils of body, speech, and mind, but principally the veils of the body, because of the physical nature, refuge and prostrations. Of course, you are also reciting the prayer to the sixfold objects of refuge, and you are holding this visualization in mind and thinking about refuge and bodhicitta. So we're working with all three, purifying veils of body, speech, and mind, but principally the body. For Vajrasattva, in general, this is the purification practice for all kinds of veils, those of body, speech, and mind, and others. But in particular, because we're working with this very special mantra, using our speech, though it purifies the veils of body, speech, and mind in total, there's a special emphasis on it purifying the veils that have come about because of unskillful speech. And for the mandala practice, we're working with mind in terms of letting go of all of our notions of self, all of our conceptual fabrications. We're further training our mind and imagining, offering as much as we can, again, to the sixfold objects of refuge. So in this way, though we are purifying veils of body, speech, and mind together, principally, or more especially, those veils of the mind. And not only does the mandala practice serve as purification in that sense, but we also say, okay, we did the purification through the prostrations and the Vajrasattva. Those are mainly purification. And the mandala, though there's purification involved, especially with the mind, it's especially for the accumulation of merit. Sort of this spiritual momentum, which sort of puts us in a place closer, brings us a place closer to where we can see through the veils of conceptual reality, clinging to self as being, independent, singular, and true, clinging to the separation between self and other, etc. So the mandala is the greatest way, we say, to accumulate merit. So let's start talking about the practice. And what I want to do, the thing that makes the mandala practice complicated is this 37-point mandala, this long mandala that includes all these things that were relevant to ancient India, which aren't so relevant to us today. And then you got a mandala plate, and you got rice going everywhere, and there's patterns to figure out. That's what seems complicated about this practice. So for now, I want to skip two things in this practice. In the beginning, you set up a support for the sixfold objects of refuge, and you put that in front of you. But we're not going to do that yet. And then you'll see very early in the practice, you do this 37-point mandala. We're going to read it, but we're not going to do it. Because if we skip those two things, I think you will quite easily see that this practice isn't so complicated. And then, once we've gone through that, and hopefully you have the sense that this practice isn't that complicated, then we'll go back and we'll learn the complicated parts. And even when you begin, if you wanted to begin without first doing this 37-point mandala, I think we can say that's okay. It's good to learn. Because, let's say when the Karmapa comes next time to America, if you go to a teaching, no doubt some Dharma Center will sponsor it, and the main Lama, like if it's Ponlop Rinpoche from Seattle, he will stand in front of His Holiness the Karmapa. He will have a mandala plate, and as a group, everybody will chant this 37-point mandala. And if you spend the time to do it once or twice a day when you do your mandala practice, then it kind of gets stuck in your mind, you end up memorizing it, and then you can participate when that happens. So it is nice to learn, but having said that, His Holiness the Karmapa has also written a book called Mudra for Our Current Day. And in this text, these same 4 practices are there: refuge and prostrations, Vajrasattva, Mandala, Guru Yoga, but everything's just a little bit more simple, a little bit shorter. And in that text, there's no 37-point mandala. So I feel like that gives us permission. If it feels too overwhelming in the beginning, you can even start doing the practice, maybe just imagining that, but not getting into the piles of rice. But I think also when we talk about that, you'll find it's not quite as complicated as it seems. So, we begin the practice, as you well know, just like we began the Vajrasattva practice. So on page 1, we have the prayer to the Lama above the head in the form of Vajradhara. So on page 1 of the mandala of the Mudra text, this text here, right? We have this glorious and precious root Lama who sits on a lotus and moon scene on the crown of my head. Having accepted me through your great kindness, please grant the realization of enlightened body, speech, and mind. Then, as you know, light from Vajrasattva's forehead, white light from his throat to your throat, red light from his heart to your heart, blue light. We feel that we've received these blessings. Vajradhara melts into light, dissolves into us, and we can rest for a moment. And then we need to do the refuge prayer. So, easiest thing to do is that prayer, right? Where that page where it has the prayer to the root Lama on the crown of our head, the back is blank. So on the back of this, you can write the prayer in Tibetan, English. You can even, I've sent out a PDF where you can actually print it on the back of this if you want to try that. But that way, you do the prayer to the root Lama, then you turn it over and you do the refuge prayer 3 times, just the same one we did here in the beginning. In Tibetan, it goes Sanje Chudong. In English, different translations, right? This is a translation than you have, but that's okay. In the Buddha, Dharma, and Supreme Assembly, I take refuge until enlightenment through the merit of generosity and the other perfections. May I accomplish Buddhahood for the benefit of beings. You can have it on the back of there, and you can put that right before the mandala section of your text, right? So you would put that before page 25. Then you open your text, you have those 2 prayers, and that's the preliminary. Yeah? Prayer to the root Guru, then refuge and bodhicitta. And now, page 25 is imagining the objects of refuge before you, exactly like the refuge tree. Yeah? That is, the lamas, the gurus in the middle, the yidams in the front, the Buddhas to the right of Vajradhara, the Dharma behind, the Sangha to the left. But except the Dharma protectors. In the refuge tree, the Dharma protectors were down below, right? Kind of in a circle around, like the trunk of the tree. And now they're just kind of interspersed throughout that group. And further we say that once you read the commentaries, you'll see like they're also now inside of a palace. There's no lake, there's no grassy shore, there's no tree, but they're in the same configuration with the only exception of the protectors are scattered amongst them. So let's look at the English on page 25. In the center of the sky, in front is the Lama. In front of him, to his right, back and left respectively, are the Yidams, Buddhas, Dharma, and Sangha, each with retinues of their own kind. Also around the throne and borders are an ocean of Dharma protectors. Present before us are the rare and sublime ones, sacred, the sacred and excellent field of accumulation. So, exactly the same as in refuge and prostrations. Almost exactly. Close enough, yeah? Now turning the page to 26. First thing we do before we start making this 37-point mandala, you say the 100-syllable mantra 1 time. And while you're doing it, you clean it, but we'll go over that later, okay? When you get to page 27, you say Om Vajra Bhumi Ahum. The base is the golden ground, powerful and completely pure. At this point, you're holding the mandala, but again, we're not going to do this right now. Then you say Om Vajra Reke Ahum. Then the outside is encircled by a wall of iron mountains. That was some rice stuff to do now, yeah? But we're going to skip the rice stuff. Then in the center is the king of mountains, Mount Meru, to the east. And know that in the mandala practice, like if this were, there are certain practices of deities where you have like one deity in the center surrounded by four other ones. The front is always east. So when it says the east, it means the front. To the east is Lupakbo, to the south, Sambuling, to the west, Banglachu, to the north, Draminyen. So you have the central mountain and four continents. Then each of these four continents have two continents beside them. And going in the same order. Yeah. Lu and Lupak, Ngayab dan Ngayab Shen, Yondan dan Lam Chokdro, Draminyen dan Draminyen di Da. Then you have a group of four things that are just wonderful, wish-fulfilling. A mountain of jewels, the wish-granting tree, the wish-fulfilling cow, the grain which grows without toil. And again, these are things from ancient India that are said to have existed in the world at one time. And as you can imagine, having a wish-granting tree, I mean, what more could you need? Why would you even need a wish-granting cow if you had a wish-granting tree, and vice versa? And now we have, this next group is the articles of a universal emperor, but anyway, the precious wheel, the precious jewel, the precious queen, the precious minister, the precious elephant, the precious horse, the precious general. And this last one is just, there are actually 7 objects of the universal emperor. This is the 8th one, or an 8th one, a treasure vase. And now we have 8 goddesses of different qualities. Goddess of laughter, goddess of garlands, like offering things. Goddess of song, goddess of dance, goddess of flowers, goddess of incense, goddess of illumination, goddess of scented water. There's 8 there. Now we just have 4 more. The sun and the moon. And the precious parasol and the victory banner, triumphant in every direction. Those are 2 of the, what we call the 8 auspicious symbols. And then, I'll show you later, but then at this next line, it says in the center, a gathering of the sublime possessions of all gods and humans with nothing lacking. You put 1 more handful of rice, which we'll go over later. And this means like anything that we consider precious and valuable that wasn't listed in those 37 things, we imagine that there now. And these are clearly manifest in numbers greater than the drops of the deep and vast oceans. I offer everything to the assembly of lamas, yirams, buddhas, bodhisattvas, dakas, dakinis, and dharma protectors. Through your compassion, please accept them for the benefit of beings, and having accepted, grant me your blessing. This next prayer is actually the same prayer which comes later, which we accumulate for the 10,000 times, 5,000 times, 100,000 times, however many times you're going to do it. And there are only 7 piles of rice you do here. And you do that here, but we'll go over it in a minute. The base is anointed with scented water and strewn with flowers, adorned with the supreme mountain, the 4 continents, the sun and the moon. Through this offering, conceived as a Buddha field, may all beings enjoy the pure realms. Buddhas and bodhisattvas who abide in the 3 times and 10 directions, Vajra, master lamas, Yiram deities and their retinues, all the Sukatas of the 3 times without exception. To you sublime ones, I offer with devoted mind the 4 continents, the supreme mountain. So this basically means the universe, is what we're saying here. When we say the supreme mountain and the 4 continents, that's symbolic of the entire physical universe. 100, 100,000, a million, myriad number of these brought together in one mandala. Through your compassion and love, please accept them. Having accepted them, grant me your blessings. Then you say this mantra, Om Mandala Puja Mega Samudra Sparana Same Ahum. Then you'll throw a little in the air, but so that's the 37-point mandala, okay? And like I said in the beginning, I didn't want to explain it. In the beginning, if you just read this without doing the rice thing, we'll say that's okay, although it's good to learn the rice thing. But maybe after I explain it, once I've gone through what we do to accumulate them, I think you'll find it's not so difficult. Then once we've offered it, we have this aspiration. By offering this excellent pleasing mandala, may obstacles on the path of awakening not arise. May we realize the intentions of the transcendent ones of the 3 times, not being deluded in existence nor remaining in tranquility. May we liberate all beings limitless of space. So that's the setup, right? Things you know, the prayer to Vajradhara, refuge in bodhicitta, objects of refuge before you, and a formation that you're familiar with. Then you have a way to offer this long mandala. And now you get to the main practice. So now, you need a cloth, like 4 feet by 4 feet. It can't be too big. It can definitely be too small. It can't be too big. I tied it around kind of, can you see that? Same color on same color. It's right here, up to my waist, yeah? And I tied it in the back. And then if you have a table before you, you want to take the other ends of this and like put it up over your table. So then you have, what to say, a little cloth valley here to catch the rice. So you can like have, you know, I don't know, something heavy to put on your table to sort of keep it there in place. I should have prepared something heavy. And then you need the rice that you're going to offer. So it's good. Okay, this is all about accumulation of merit, right? We accumulate merit by making offerings. Our offering is more meaningful if we have put some effort into it, whatever that means, whether that means financially, whether that means care to clean it and sort it, care to color it, care to anoint it with saffron. You can buy semi-precious stones and add it to this rice, you know. Anything that we do to enhance the offering enhances our accumulation of merit. So maybe like you start with two or three cups, yeah? Best case scenario, like you could use brand new rice every time and just like store it up and then offer it to a food bank or something. Most people don't actually do that. So let's say you do it today, you're done for the day. You can keep this rice in the cloth. You just kind of tie up the cloth, tie the corners into a knot, and then tomorrow you open your cloth, you know, you've still got those 2-3 cups of rice in there. And then symbolic of like offering totally new rice, you just take a little handful of new rice and drop it in. So you refresh the rice each time you come back the next day to offer. Or if you did more than one session in a day, you would refresh it then too. Then you need your mandala plate, yeah? So a bit of a snafu on the mandala plates that we ordered from Kathmandu. They have been made, they have been bought, but the shipping, there aren't enough planes. I don't know like if there are no planes flying out of Kathmandu, but the shops that are shipping internationally, my friend says are not open. So when we're going to get these, I don't know. In the meantime, there are many people in the Sangha who have mandala plates that I'm sure they will allow people to borrow. So once this finishes, like we still have another week, right? There are still a few at the center that I will go ahead and make an executive decision that we can loan to a couple people until the mandala plates that we have ordered come. And for people who ordered one and haven't received it yet, we'll put you in touch with people relatively close to you so that we can make a way to safely exchange. Yeah? We shouldn't really meet these days, but we'll make a way for you to get the plate, clean the plate, so that you can have something to use come a week from now. Once you have your mandala plate, good to clean it. Everything should be clean, actually. This cloth, right? You should, if you can get a new cloth, great. It should be something dedicated for this purpose. That would be best. Yeah. The mandala plate, once you get it, clean it. Everything should be clean. And with that, now you're ready to start the practice. So before you, the objects of refuge are in the sky. And each time we offer the mandala, we only do it with 7 piles of rice here for the purpose of the accumulation, yeah? And so what are the 7? They are, in the center you have Mount Meru, the central mountain. So that's the first pile. Then you go in the 4 cardinal directions. Then you put 1 at the top, 1 to the right, 1 to the back, and then 1 to the left. Then you do the only tricky part, the sun and the moon. You start in this upper, what to say, upper left-hand corner, the sun and the moon. So you do those 7, yeah, each time. So it's like, maybe, maybe it's okay. We were going to switch to the side camera, but I think this is okay. Can you see okay on the streaming from this front camera?
Yes. And Daniel wonders if we can use a regular plate if we don't have a mandala.
Yeah, I mean, this is kind of built to be convenient, If you're just holding a flat plate, it's going to be, I guess it could work, but it's going to be easy. There are there are dozens of mandala plates around Portland right now that I'm sure we can get to you. So if you want to do that, you could do that for now. But it's not going to be difficult to get everybody a mandala plate who needs one. So if you once you start the accumulation, you kind of hold it. What I do, there are two ways to do it, I guess. You need to hold your mala too, right? So you've got your mala between your thumb and forefinger as usual. And then these last three fingers you can use to grab the plate. Yeah, you see that? So you're putting the mandala over your middle finger, your ring finger, and your pinky, and then, holding it, grasping it like that, pushing it up against your index finger. Then your hand is still free to count the beads on your mala. Takes a little bit of getting used to, but not so difficult. So when you offer, you just make these 7 piles, yeah? 1 in the middle, and they don't pile up. Yeah, the rice just scatters everywhere. That's okay. 1 in the middle, then 1 in each of the 4 directions, then this corner up here, right? And then this corner back here. I mean, we would say what, like first like 10 o'clock and then 4 o'clock, something like that. You just make those 7 piles, like you grab 1 handful of rice, you make those 7 piles. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. For that last one, like let go of all the rice. It's not good to hold back, right? You want to offer everything. So for that last, for the moon, you let go of everything. Then you wipe it off with your wrist and you click 1 bead. That's 1. Then you pick up another handful of rice and you do it again. You're saying this prayer at the same time, but first we'll just do the physical thing. So you go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Click a bead and wipe it off. Yeah. Mandala is the fastest of all the 4 preliminary practices. Yeah. So if you're going to do it in Tibetan, it would go something like Sashi Pucha Jushik Meton Tram, Rira Blingshin Nide Jembadi, Sanja Shingdo Mikte Poayi, Droko Namda Shingla Chupa Sho. Sashi Pucha Jushik Meton Tram, Rira Blingshin Nide Jembadi, Sanja Shingdo Mikte Poayi, Droko Namda Shingla Chupa Sho. Just like that, yeah? Of course, in the beginning, you have to focus on learning these 4 lines. Maybe you have it memorized already. If not, it will come quickly. You can also choose to do it in English, in which case, it would just be like, the base is anointed with scented water and strewn with flowers, adorned with the supreme mountain, the 4 continents, the sun and moon. Their offering, conceived as a Buddha field, may all beings enjoy the pure realms. Yeah? So in the beginning, it's a little busy, just like it was when you learned the 100-syllable mantra, right? In the beginning, you're basically just reading the mantra, and it's very hard to do any visualization or anything else because you have to conceptually focus on learning the mantra. But then once you learn it, then you can do other things with the mind. So don't worry about that, You can stop and think think about what you're doing, take a break for a minute, then just continue. As you're reading the words in the English, you have some sense in your mind of what you're doing, right? And this pattern, this 7-point pattern, this comes very quickly. After the first session, you'll have the muscle memory to do that. So that won't be difficult at all. And that's it. I mean, each time you're doing this offering, you feel like, the key is this, you feel like you are offering to the objects of refuge the entire external world, like the physical foundations, like the universe, the planets, on one particular planet, the mountains, the rivers, the trees, the jewels, the gold, then everything in the world that is beautiful, beautiful art. I mean, it doesn't have to be limited to the things in here. Beautiful form, beautiful sound, music, incense, beautiful smells, anything that pleases the 5 senses, You can kind of just sort of let your mind go. And the place where most people get stuck with the mandala is they can't relate to the 37 points of the 37 mandala, of the 37-point mandala, right? Like the wish-granting cow, the grain that, grows without toil, the precious elephant. What does that mean, But don't let those things be an obstacle, Those were just cultural representations of what was considered the highest and the best, in ancient Indian culture. So may be good not to just compose your own, but just know that anything that you conceive of is like included within that. And even though when we recite this 4-line prayer, it only says the Supreme Mountain, the 4 continents, the sun and the moon, like I said, we imagine you're offering everything every time, including yourself, including your sense of all the virtue you've ever accumulated. So it's like complete surrender, you know, letting go of all grasping, all fixation, complete surrender, where then there's like nothing left but our deepest nature, which is Buddha nature, right? So maybe I'll do, I don't know, just a few more of these so you can see the pattern of it. The base is anointed with scented water and strewn with flowers, adorned with the Supreme Mountain, the 4 continents, the sun and moon. Through this offering conceived as a Buddha field, may all beings enjoy the pure realms. The base is anointed with scented water and strewn with flowers, adorned with the Supreme Mountain, the 4 continents, the sun and the moon. Through this offering conceived as the Buddha field, may all beings enjoy the pure realms. The base is anointed with scented water and strewn with flowers, adorned with the Supreme Mountain, the 4 continents, the sun and the moon. Through this offering conceived as the Buddha field, may all beings enjoy the pure realms. Sashi puchu jushik meton cham rea vincinated jambadi sanja shingda mikte poyi joko namda shingla chupa shok. Sashi puchu jushik meton cham rea vincinated jambadi sanja shingda mikte poyi joko namda shingla chupa shok. Yeah? So actually very easy, yeah? This is like I said, it's definitely the fastest, and it's really not that difficult. And now that's basically the practice, right? You do these introductory prayer to the Lama, the refuge in bodhicitta. You imagine that the objects of refuge are there, more or less like from the refuge tree. You say this 37-point mandala, doing your best to just understand it means the best of everything. And then very quickly you're to this point where you're offering this 7-point mandala, just trying to keep in mind like the sense of surrender, offering everything. They say that this is one of the best ways to accumulate merit because through this we don't get stingy, you know. There's no need to hold back because it's all imagined. But if you can buy into the imagination, the benefit is there, they say, from offering all these things. There's no regret after having offered, you know. Like you give $100 to a beggar and then 5 minutes that, oh gosh, 50 surely would have been enough. That's not going to happen. All these things that can later undermine our offerings isn't going to happen in the context of this practice. So then, once you've done however many you're going to do for the session, right? So if you're trying to do 10,000, that's like, I don't know, 150 a day is probably a safe way to do it, 130, whatever you do. Then, traditionally, you would then do that 37-point mandala one more time. You do it at the very beginning and the very end. If you don't want to do that, you don't have to do that. But some people really want to know like how it's done in the most traditional way. So know that after that, you would then just go back to the beginning. You don't have to do the 100-syllable mantra again, though. You would go back to page 27, I think. Yeah, page 27. But you don't have to do that. After you do as many of those as you could do, you could just continue. You would say, now you're just making prayers to the assembly of the lamas who have fully perfected the 3 kayas. We're on page 36. I offer outwardly, inwardly, secretly, and ultimately, in accepting my body, possessions, and all phenomena. Please grant me the supreme, unsurpassable siddhi. That's realizing the nature of mind, realizing the ground Mahamudra. Please grant the realization of Mahamudra. Whatever virtue I have gathered, this is the 7-branch prayer that you know, however minimal, through prostrations, offering, confessing, rejoicing, beseeching, and praying, I dedicate it to complete and perfect awakening. Having offered all possessions of myself and others who are limitless as space, may all beings become completely fulfilled in the 2 accumulations, accumulation of merit and wisdom. And then the disillusion, just like we do in the refuge practice. The field of accumulation, that means the objects of refuge, melt into light, they dissolve into you, and then you rest. And then you go to the dedications on page 63. Not so bad, yeah? What should we do? Since we do have the Zoom, can you unmute and see if there are any questions about that? So any questions about that for anybody on the Zoom? Did it seem clear? Nodding. Nodding's good. Okay, well, if there are no questions then we'll go back and we'll tackle the slightly more complicated aspects. Yeah? So there's something that is traditionally done. You make a little support for the you muted me. Linda, you muted me. You muted me. So there's a, you traditionally start by taking a second mandala plate and putting like on your altar representations of the Buddhas, the Lamas, the Yidams, the Buddhas, the Dharma, the Sangha, and the protectors. Okay? In this book, it talks very clearly about how to do that. And I realize that I'll make a sheet. I'll write something down to make it a little more clear than it is in here. So if you have two mandala plates, it always says that you use the better of the two for the support, for the 6 objects of refuge, right? So I've already made one up that I'll show you, but it's very easy to do. You would take like a scan, you don't even need quite a quarter cup of rice, maybe like an eighth, or that's like a quarter cup is 4 tablespoons, like 2 or 3 tablespoons of rice. Then you would put just a little bit of water in, only enough. You don't want any water in the bottom of the bowl once you're done stirring it up. And now the rice will very neatly stick together. So what you do is you're going to have a pile in the middle for the lamas, and then a pile in the front for the yidams, and then a pile to the right for the Buddhas, pile to the back for the Dharma, pile to the left for the Sangha. And then you just imagine the protectors are in there. You don't have to do anything special. So you pour the water on this clean rice, right? Then you just take it and you kind of carefully and as symmetrically as you can, you make these 5 piles. And I don't want to take the time to do it now, but after you've kind of made those piles, there's going to be, you can't really see this so well, but there's kind of like rice scattered here, there, and everywhere. Then you just kind of tidy it up, you know, make the 5 piles kind of, just bring all that random rice together into a pile. So I did it before we started on another mandala plate, you know, so it's quite clean, yeah? It looks like this. And then as it says in the text, then you put it on a covered, you can't see this, but there's like a covered higher place, like on your altar that you can set it. And then you leave it there for the duration of the practice, the mandala practice, right? When you're making it, you remember what that front pile was with the yidams, and you put it up there in that same way so that the yidams are in front. Right? Just pay attention to where the yidams are when you make yours and put it up there. Of course, I forgot to do a couple things when I did that. First, it says that you would clean it 3 times when you're saying the 100-syllable mantra. So what this means is you do it with your wrist, you know, because we want, they say it's symbolic of our mind, you know, wanting it to be completely pure. We say Om Vajrasattva, you clockwise, you go 3 times. Om Vajrasattva Samaya Manabala, Vajrasattva Denabha, Tishadita Meba, Sutrashoya Meba, Suprashoya Meba, Anurata Meba, Sarvasiti Meba, the Savakam Shuzame, Chitam, Shirya, Kurung, Ha, Ha, Ho, Bhagavan Savatagata Vajramayam, the Vajrabha Samaya Svatva, Ah. Then there are 2 mantras that I'll write down. Om Vajra Amrita Kunda Lehanahana Hom Pe Om Svava Vashuddha Sarvadharma Svava Vashuddha Hom. Then you imagine that the ingredients have become pure. Everything has become sort of the realm of emptiness, the expanse of emptiness, in which now anything can arise. And then you put those 5 piles on there. I didn't do that when I showed you the 5 piles. Then you put that on the altar before you. Okay? It's very easy, very simple. I'll write it down on a piece of paper and send it to you all, just so you have it in a very clear, clear place, easy to follow. So that you do, the first day you do the practice, then you don't have to do it again. It's just there on your altar for the duration. If you want to do it and you don't have 2 mandala plates, you can find just a nice plate. Maybe if you could even buy a special plate for this, that's best. We tend to not mix. We do not mix things that we use for our own enjoyment, like glasses and cups and plates things for Dharma stuff. So there's usually, Tibetans would find that just crazy, what to say, so disrespectful. So anyway, if you can do that, great. And if you don't want to have it, you can actually do without it. Just rely on your visualization and any other supports you have on your altar. Okay, so that's the complicated thing number 1. Not so complicated. Okay, now, complicated thing number 2. The 37-point mandala. So if you're looking at the text, you can turn back to page 26. So again, the setup is the same, right? You've prepared your cloth, you've got your rice there. And I have this, it's actually a pan, but it's big and it's copper, so I thought it would be more clear to use this. The first thing you do, you'll see is, it says just like we did with this mandala of the 6 objects of refuge that we placed before us, we clean it 3 times while saying the 100-syllable mantra. And it'll say that you take a small handful of rice when you do this. And then, again, starting in the front, going clockwise 3 times while saying the 100-syllable mantra, we clean it. Om Vajrasattva-samaya Manabalaya Vajrasattva-tenapa Tishitidameva Sutrashoyameva Supkoyameva Anuratameva Sarvasiddhimepiyasa Sarvakarmasutame Chitam Shirya Kuruhung Haha Haha Ho Bhagavan Sarvatatagata Vajramayama Vajrabhavamaha Samayasvatva. Sometimes it says do 1 more counterclockwise, but it doesn't say that in the 2 commentaries, the one by Mingyur Rinpoche and the one by the Torch of True Meaning, so we won't do that. But if you see somebody doing that, or I probably said that in the past, it's not wrong, there are just different ways to do things. But here, 3 times clockwise. Then for this next one, there's a choice. On page 27, at Om Vajrabhumi Ahom, you can have like some water that you put like saffron in or rose petals in or something and sprinkle at this point. What does it say? Om Vajrabhumi Ahom. The base is the golden brown, powerful and completely pure. Sometimes you can sprinkle water there, or you can just put a little rice in the center. Okay. Then what's next? Om Vajrareke Ahom. The outside is entirely encircled by a wall of iron mountains. So the only tricky thing here is you should write like counterclockwise right under that. So then you know that you just go around the rim like that. Counterclockwise. That's the only tricky thing to know there. So as you come back by and mark up your text, under that just write counterclockwise, circle. And now we get into the 37. So you know the first 5 things, right? You got the central mountain, and then the continents in the 4 directions. So you can mark up each and every thing, like with numbers, but I think, this isn't that complicated. Central mountain, and then the 4 cardinal directions, going in first front, then going clockwise. Yeah. So we'll do it in English. And the center is the king of mountains, Mount Meru, and you just take another handful as much as you have to. Yeah. You can put multiple things. You can put multiple piles from one handful. To the east is Lupakpo. To the south is Zambuling. To the west is Bang Lachu. To the north is Dra Minyen. So those first 5 quite easy, right? Central mountain, then 4. The 4 cardinal directions. And this is a little tricky because normally we're going to go clockwise, but for these satellite continents, we go first to the right and then to the left. So it says Ngayap and Ngayap Shen. So you got the central front pile here, right? First you go to the right of that, then back to the left. Ngayap and Ngayap, I'm sorry, Lu and Lupak, sorry. Then for the next one, again, you're going counterclockwise basically around this thing, right? Ngayap and Ngayabjin, Yonden on Lamchokdro, Dramingyen and Dramingyen Dida. So there's the first 13, right? Yeah, first 13 out of the 37. Not so bad, right? First you go in the center in the 4 cardinal directions. Then for each of those ones in the cardinal directions, you have 2. The only tricky thing is you have to go counterclockwise. And now it's going to unfold in patterns of 4, and it's quite simple. So here's my idea. Sometimes you're going to start in the front for 4, like you'll go 1, 2, 3, 4, or you're going to start in like the intermediate direction, like northeast, southeast, southwest. 1, 2, 3, 4. So when you're going to start in the cardinal direction, starting in the front, I think you should make something like this, right underneath right underneath the first of those 4. Yeah. So here, it's the Mountain of Jewels. You make this under the Mountain of Jewels, and then you know that the next 4 just go in the cardinal directions. Okay. So the Mountain of, we've done all this other stuff, right? Then the Mountain of Jewels goes in the front, then the wish-granting tree, the wish-fulfilling cow, and the grain that grows without toil. And now, the next set of 4 starts with the precious wheel, right? Under the precious wheel, you do that again. You make that mark again, and now you know that those next 4 also go in the cardinal directions. The precious wheel, the precious jewel, the precious queen, the precious minister. This thing's heavy. Now, starting with the precious elephant, these go in the intermediate directions. So they make something like a dot and then a line going off to a 45-degree angle, right? So you know instead of starting here in the front, you're going to start here in the intermediate direction. So the precious elephant, the precious horse, the precious general, the great treasure vase. Okay? Now we go back to the cardinal directions. So under the goddess of laughter, you do this again. So now there are 8 goddesses. The first 4 go in the cardinal directions, then the second 4 are going to go in the intermediate directions. So under the goddess of laughter, you have this one indicating the cardinal directions. So you go the goddess of laughter, the goddess of garlands, the goddess of song, the goddess of dance. And now for these next 4, starting with the goddess of flowers, you put this one going off in a 45-degree angle. The goddess of flowers, the goddess of incense, the goddess of illumination, the goddess of scented water. Now we're almost done, just 4 more. And this is as tricky as it gets. The sun and the moon. So you already know this, right? The sun and the moon go from kind of like upper left down to lower left. The sun and the moon. So I think you can make something. Maybe you can do this. And it just refers to the next 2 though, right? Yeah. The sun and the moon. And then the next 2 for the precious parasol and the banner of victory. You do this. So you're basically making an X, yeah? It goes the sun and the moon, the sun, the moon, the precious parasol, and the banner of victory triumphant in every direction. You make an X, right? And then we have this, in the center, a gathering of the sublime possessions of gods and humans with nothing lacking. Take one more big handful, drop it in the center, and this includes, as some of the Rinpoches joke these days, the precious cell phone, the precious MacBook Air, whatever, the precious Ferrari. And that's it. And then you just have the rest of these prayers, where... Well, let's continue, because there's just one more thing to do. In the center, a gathering of the sublime possessions of gods and humans with nothing lacking, clearly manifest in numbers greater than drops, and deep and vast oceans. I offer everything to the assembly of... And you're holding it up now, yeah? You've got some rice on the plate. I offer everything to the assembly of lamas, yidams, buddhas, bodhisattvas, dakinis, dakinis, and dharma protectors. Through your compassion, please accept them for the benefit of beings, and having accepted them, grant me your blessings. Now here's that 4-line prayer that we do for the accumulation. And you do those 7 points here. The base is anointed with scented water and strewn with flowers, adorned with the supreme mountain, the 4 continents, the sun and the moon. Through this offering, conceived as a Buddha field, may all beings enjoy the pure realms. Buddhas and Bodhisattvas who abide in the 3 times in the 10 directions, Vajra Master Lamas, Yidam deities, and the retinues, all the Sukatas of the 3 times without exception. To you sublime ones, I offer with devoted mind the 4 continents and the supreme mountain, 100, 100,000, a million, myriad number of those brought together in one mandala. Through your compassion and love, please accept them. Having accepted them, grant me your blessings. Then at Om, then you throw a little rice in the air at this mantra. Om Mandala Puja Mega Samudra Sabarana Samayahum. Then you clean it off. Then you have this aspiration. By offering this excellent and pleasing mandala, may obstacles on the path of awakening not arise. May we realize the intentions of the transcendent ones of the 3 times, not being deluded in existence, nor remaining in tranquility. May we liberate all beings as limitless as space. And then you would go into, Sashi Putra Jushi Beto Sham, Briya Mingshi Dita Jemadi, Sanda Shinda Mikti Puvi, Dropananda Shunga Chupasha. Then you begin the accumulation. Super confusing? Not so confusing? What? Super confusing? Raise your hand. Not so confusing? Raise your hand. Yeah. So let's do it one more time, yeah? It's really not that bad. You got going back to page 26. And it'll be more clear. So if you haven't marked your text, listening live, don't worry about marking your text. If you're watching the recording, if you haven't made those marks yet that I said, go back, put those marks in your text, and then you'll be able to follow this, I think, quite easily. So the first thing is the 100-syllable mantra, which I won't say again. You grabbed a little bit of rice. While you're saying the 100-syllable mantra, you cleaned it 3 times. Yeah. Then you have Om Vajrabhumi Ahung. If you have water, you sprinkle it. If you don't, you put a little rice there. The base is the golden ground, powerful and completely pure. Then you have Om Vajrareke Ahum. The outside is entirely encircled by a wall of iron mountains. You wrote in your text counterclockwise. You start in the front, and just around the rim, you scatter rice around the rim. Yep. Then turning the page. So now we have the mountain in the center and the 4 continents. And the center is and you want to make the pile when you say each of these words, So I think once you have these markings in your text, it'll be really easy to do. You know that the mountain in the middle goes in the middle, and the next 4 continents just go in the cardinal directions. In the center is the king of mountains, Mount Reru. To the east is Lupakpo. To the south is Zambuling. To the west is Banglachu. To the north, Draminyen. So there's the first 5 of 37. Now we have these little satellite continents around the 4 continents in the cardinal directions. And you go to the left and right, or actually the right and then the left of each of them. So Ludon, Lupak, Ngayap, and Ngayap Jen, Yondan, and Lamchok Dro, Dramin Yen, and Dramin Yen Dida. Now that's 13 out of the 37. Now the next 8 both start in the cardinal directions, and you'll see the markings in your text. So for the next 8, you just go, 1, 2, 3, 4, the 4 cardinal directions, and then 1, 2, 3, 4 again. The mountain of jewels, the wish-granting tree, the wish-fulfilling cow, the grain which grows without toil. Cardinal directions. And again, the precious wheel, the precious jewel, the precious queen, the precious minister. Then you'll see the mark in your text to start in the upper right-hand corner. The precious elephant, the precious horse, the precious general, the great treasure vase. Now we're going to the 8 goddesses, the first 4 in the cardinal directions, the second 4 in the intermediate directions. The goddess of laughter, the goddess of garlands, the goddess of song, the goddess of dance. Now the intermediate directions, the goddess of flowers, the goddess of incense, the goddess of illumination, the goddess of scented water. Now, the most tricky part is the sun and the moon, so you know where they go because you've already learned the 7.1. It goes the sun and the moon, and then the parasol and the victory banner. You make this X, right? The sun, the moon, the precious parasol, the banner of victory, triumphant in every direction. And now you have that last big handful. In the center, a gathering of sublime possessions, gods and humans with nothing lacking, clearly manifest in numbers greater than the deep oceans, and that's it. And let's just do it one more time. We'll go through the up until you throw the rice. I offer everything to the assembly of lamas, yidams, buddhas, bodhisattvas, dakas, dakinis, and dharma protectors. We're on 31 at the second line. Through your compassion, please accept them for the benefit of beings, and having accepted them, grant your blessings. Then the 7-point mandala again. The base is anointed with the scented water and strewn with flowers, adorned with the supreme mountain, the 4 continents, the sun and the moon. Through this offering, conceived as a Buddha field, may all beings enjoy the pure realms. Now you're just holding it up. Buddhas and bodhisattvas who abide in the 3 times in the 10 directions, Vajra Master Lamas, Yidam deities and their retinues, all the Sukritas of the 3 times without exception. To you, sublime ones, I offer with devoted mind the 4 continents, the supreme mountain, 100,000, a million myriad number of these brought together in one mandala. Through your compassion and love, please accept them, and having accepted them, grant me your blessings. Om Mandala Puja Mega Samudra Sparana Samaya Hum. Clear it off, and then you start into the 7-point mantra, mandala, for the accumulation. So, you know, there's more that can be said about this practice that can be found in the Torch of True Meaning, which is sort of like the technical handbook, right? And then Mingyur Rinpoche's Turning Confusion into Clarity. But it's better to start with just the basics. First, just learn how to do the darn practice, right? Just learn the technique. And then once you got that, then you can go back and read to sort of enhance your understanding. And I don't want to go into more because it'll just be more confusing for now. But, you know, a month or 5 weeks' time, we'll have another one of these groups where we can clarify questions that have come up, where we can talk a little bit more about other aspects. So maybe you can unmute, Linda, in case there are some questions. So are there any questions about this? Yeah. You can leave it there, because even in the Guru Yoga practice, we still have this configuration. Though, I mean, it's just like having representations of the Buddha Dharma Sangha, Guru Yidam Protector on the altar. So you can leave it, or if you want to take it down, good question though, because this rice that we use for the practice, we shouldn't then eat it ourselves like when we're done. Depending on what you did with it, like some people color it with just food coloring, so I mean, I guess that's okay to eat in theory. Other people end up using paints and things that would make it so you wouldn't want to eat it. But this you can kind of cook and put out for animals or something. We shouldn't eat that rice. And same of the rice that's up on that mandala on the altar. But like I said, if you wanted to just minimally wash it, sort it, you could also offer it to a food bank, whatever. That would be okay too. Long grain rice it's very pretty and especially elegant when cooked. And this practice, it's very fragile and it turns into rice dust pretty quickly. So medium or short grain rices will hold their structural integrity better. Not that there's anything wrong with using, like I used basmati rice, but I just found out, breaks down pretty quickly. Well, any more questions? Okay, well, I know some of you do have mandala plates already, and if you do, you're ready to go beginning of April. For those of you who don't, in the next couple days, I will send out the instructions on how to create, just a little more clear and concise instructions on how you create this mandala that you then put in front of you, if you want to do that. And when I send that out, I will find out who still needs a mandala plate, and then between the ones we still have here at the center and between people who maybe live close to you, where we can, we can arrange a kind of safe drop-off where you can then be careful how you collect it, wash it, etc. before you use it. We can set something up to get anybody who needs a mandala plate until they're able to be shipped from Kathmandu. So, I think that's it from my side. Of course, you can get in touch with me anytime with any questions you do have. Yeah. And so for now, we'll just do the dedication prayer to end. I dedicate this virtue that all beings without exception reach the undying state of Vajra mind through the ever blissful union of means and wisdom, traveling the inner Vajra path. May they attain the pinnacle of awakening. By this virtue, may I quickly realize Mahamudra and establish all beings without exception in this state. Okay, thanks to all of you who tuned in, whether it's through the Vimeo, whether it's through the Zoom app, and whether you're watching this in the future. Okay, good practice to everybody.